Welcome back to the Actual News Podcast. My name is Olga Nestorova. In today's show, we talk about Biden commuting federal death row sentences, Congress passing Social Security Fairness Act, administration taking action on China's semiconductor practices, Starbucks workers expanding strike, Trump at America Fest, new nominees announced, top Democrat accuses Republicans of protecting Musk's China investments, and much, much more on Ukraine, Russia, Georgia, Syria, and South Korea. Let's go. Well, first things first, we woke up to breaking news that the House Ethics Committee did find evidence that Matt Gaetz paid tens of thousands of dollars to women for sex and drugs on at least 20 occasions, including paying a 17-year-old girl for sex in 2017. This was first leaked by CNN, then confirmed by all the news sources. The committee concluded in its bombshell document that Gaetz violated Florida state laws, including the state's statutory rape law. President Biden has commuted the sentences of nearly all inmates on federal death row. The 37 persons affected by President Biden's action will serve life imprisonment without parole. President-elect Trump has promised to resume federal executions. Also, what was reported this morning by Wall Street Journal is that, according to their sources, President Biden has called Pentagon over 4 times over the weekend, asking for an update over the drones in the skies above New Jersey. No update on that yet. The Biden-Harris administration is also taking decisive steps to protect American workers and businesses from China's unfair trade practices in the semiconductor sector, which threaten U.S. national security and economic stability. Semiconductors are crucial to various industries, including defense, automotive, medical devices, and infrastructure. China's non-market policies, industrial targeting, and unfair competition in the semiconductor market have created dangerous supply chain dependencies. The key actions announced include Section 301 investigation, where the U.S. Trade Representative is investigating China's unfair practices in the semiconductor industry, focusing on its targeting of foundational chips, including silicon carbide wafers, and their impact on critical U.S. sectors. Next, the administration has allocated $2 billion through the CHIPS and Science Act to encourage domestic production, alongside billions in private sector investments. This initiative includes projects by companies like Texas Instruments and Global Foundries to strengthen supply chains for critical industries. New policies will restrict federal agencies from procuring semiconductors from Chinese manufacturers linked to security risks, while promoting the use of domestically produced chips for federal contracts. The government has initiated a comprehensive strategy to address non-market practices and enhance supply chain resilience in line with the quadrennial supply chain review. This includes bolstering U.S. semiconductor production and procurement strategies. The U.S. is working with international partners to address China's market distortions in the semiconductor sector. The U.S. has established partnerships with countries like Vietnam, India, and Mexico to strengthen global semiconductor chain. The U.S. Congress passed the Social Security Fairness Act early on Saturday, which will boost retirement payments for retirees who also draw public pensions, such as former police officers and firefighters. The Senate approved the bill 76-20 vote, following 327-75 vote in the House last month. The bill now awaits President Joe Biden's signature. The legislation repeals 2 provisions that have reduced benefits for individuals receiving both public pensions and Social Security, impacting about 2.5 million people. The bill's passage reflects the influence of advocacy groups for affected workers, who could see hundreds of dollars in additional monthly benefits. However, fiscal experts caution that the change could accelerate the program's financial difficulties, potentially exhausting the Social Security Trust even sooner than expected. Now to some latest quick news. Yemen has reported the highest global burden of cholera with nearly 250,000 suspected cases and 861 associated deaths as of December 1st. This accounts for 35% of worldwide cholera cases and 18% of related deaths this year, according to UN World Health Organization. Demonstrators supporting and opposing South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol held rival protests several hundred meters apart in Seoul on Saturday, a week after he was impeached over his short-lived declaration of martial law. Iran is currently facing an energy crisis, with schools and government offices closed and manufacturing nearly brought to a halt. U.S. officials stated that North Korea, not Kremlin, was the first to suggest sending North Korean troops to assist Russia in the war against Ukraine. Asma al-Assad, the wife of former Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and a British national, has reportedly filed for divorce in Moscow. She has also requested the Russian authorities to allow her and her children to return to UK for urgent medical treatment. Vietnam's government will begin construction by the end of 2025 on a railroad linking its northern part of Haiphong to the border with China, according to the country's prime minister. Now back to longer readouts. A woman was fatally set ablaze on New York City subway, suspect apprehended. On Sunday morning, a woman was tragically killed after being set on fire while she appeared to be asleep on a New York City subway train. The incident occurred around 7:30 a.m. on a stationary F train at the Coney Island Stillwell Avenue station in Brooklyn. An unidentified man approached the woman and used a lighter to ignite her clothing without any prior interaction. The assailant then calmly exited the train and sat down, just watching her burn. Later that day, authorities arrested a 33-year-old Guatemalan migrant in connection with the attack. The suspect was apprehended while riding another subway train, identified by high school students who recognized him from images released by the police. This incident adds to a concerning rise in subway-related homicides in New York City. As of November 2024, there have been 9 reported cases on the subway compared to 5 during the same period in 2023. Workers at Starbucks have broadened their strike to include 4 additional U.S. cities, the union representing over 10,000 baristas announced on Saturday. The 5-day strike, which began last Friday, initially saw closures of Starbucks cafes in Los Angeles, Chicago, and Seattle. Now, the walkout has expanded to include locations in New Jersey, New York, Philadelphia, and St. Louis, according to a statement from Workers United. The union did not specify the exact city in New Jersey where the strike is taking place. The expanded strike highlights ongoing labor tensions between Starbucks and its employees, as workers continue to push for improved wages, benefits, and workplace conditions. President-elect Trump announced plans to launch an anti-drug advertising campaign targeting the physical toll of substances like fentanyl, while reiterating his pledge to designate Mexican drug cartels as terrorist organizations. Speaking at a Turning Point conference in Phoenix, Arizona, Trump highlighted the campaign's focus on showing the bad effects of drug use on appearance, stating, quote, "They ruin your look, they ruin your face, they ruin your skin, they ruin your teeth," unquote. He compared the initiative to a political campaign, adding that while it would require significant funding, it would be relatively inexpensive. While the proposal draws comparisons to Nancy Reagan's 1980s campaign, Just Say No, which aimed to deter drug use among youth. However, Trump did not provide concrete details about his program, and his transition team declined to comment any further. Here's a quote from Trump talking about this issue.
We spend a lot of money, but it'll be a very small amount of money relatively. We're going to advertise how bad drugs are for you, how bad they are. They ruin your look, they ruin your face, they ruin your skin, and ruin your teeth. If you want to have horrible teeth, take a lot of fentanyl. If you want to have skin that looks so terrible, take fentanyl. We're going to show what these drugs are doing to you. Nobody's done that before, and we're going to do it.
Trump also revived his campaign promise to designate Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. He previously shelved the idea in 2019 at the request of then Mexican President Manuel Lopez Obrador. Critics, including U.S. officials, had warned that such a move could strain U.S.-Mexico relations and complicate joint efforts to combat drug trafficking. Fentanyl-related overdoses remain a significant crisis in the U.S., with synthetic opioid death projected to claim 50 to 60,000 lives in 2024. Trump's platform includes plans to deploy special forces, cyber warfare, and other military strategies to dismantle cartel operations upon taking office. At the same conference, Trump reiterated the widely debunked theory that vaccines cause autism, a claim consistently refuted by extensive scientific research.
Think of this. 25 years ago, autism, 1 in 10,000 children. Today, it's 1 in 36 children. Is something wrong? I think so.
He also spoken about a new rumor that folks are talking that the new president is actually Elon Musk. He said, no, it's not happening. And here's why he feels safe that Musk will not be taking over his own presidency.
No, he's not going to be president, that I can tell you. And I'm safe. You know why? He can't be. He wasn't born in this country.
I wouldn't be that entertained. Meanwhile, everyone is buzzing about Elon Musk crashing the Trump-Bezos dinner at Mar-a-Lago, playfully dubbing him as the third wheel. Well, not so much so Benjamin Netanyahu, who recently spoke with Elon Musk, asking him for advice on how to combat the threats from AI technology, where Musk sort of hinted to being a president, to which Netanyahu said, well, but officially, last time I checked, you cannot be president. You weren't born in the United States. And Musk said, well, officially. And so Netanyahu then responded, well, unofficially, you are president. And Musk responded, yes. By the way, this was reported by The Independent. Now, let's talk about Trump unveiling his key appointments for his incoming administration. First, he nominated Mauricio Claver Carone, a former official known for his strong anti-communist stance, as special envoy for Latin America. Then Bo Hines, who's a former congressional candidate, was appointed executive director of Trump's new Digital Assets Advisory Council under crypto czar David Sachs. Billionaire Steven Feinberg, co-founder of Cerberus Capital Management, is set to be nominated as Deputy Secretary of Defense. Katie Miller, a veteran of Trump's first administration and the wife, by the way, of Stephen Miller, who loves putting kids in cages, was named to the Department of Government Efficiency, led by Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. Trump appointed The Apprentice producer Mark Burnett as special envoy to UK. Well, Burnett will focus on trade, investment, and cultural exchanges. By the way, he's also UK citizen. Billionaire businessman Tillman Fertitta, owner of Houston Rockets, was nominated as ambassador to Italy. Fertitta's extensive hospitality experience aligns with Trump's preference for high-profile business figures in diplomatic roles. Well, Representative Rosa DeLauro, the top Democrat on the House Appropriations Committee, accused Republicans in Congress of protecting Elon Musk's investments in China by removing provisions that would restrict U.S. investments in the country. In a letter, she suggested that Musk, Tesla's CEO, may have influenced the government funding process to remove these provisions due to his significant investments in China and personal ties to Chinese Communist Party leadership. Musk's opposition to the original funding deal has raised questions about his motives, according to DeLauro. Tesla did not immediately comment on the matter. President-elect Trump had previously appointed Musk to co-lead a project aimed at reducing government costs. President-elect Trump suggested on Sunday that he supports allowing TikTok to continue operating in the United States, at least temporarily, citing the app's role in his campaign success. Speaking at the America Fest in Phoenix, Arizona, Trump highlighted the billions of views his campaign garnered on the platform, calling it, quote, a record, and jokingly adding, quote, maybe we gotta keep this sucker around for a little while, unquote. Trump's remarks contrast with the U.S. Senate's April passage of a law requiring TikTok's Chinese parent company ByteDance to divest the app due to national security concerns. Trump also sparked controversy over the weekend on Truth Social with remarks on Panama Canal and Greenland. Well, first, President-elect Trump accused Panama of overcharging for the use of Panama Canal and suggested that if Panama failed to manage it acceptably, the U.S. could demand the canal's return to American control. Trump also raised concerns about potential Chinese influence over the canal, calling for vigilance. This marks a rare instance of a U.S. leader implying pressure on a sovereign nation to relinquish control of its territory, despite the canal's transfer to Panama in 1999. Trump justified his stance by citing the extraordinary generosity of the U.S. and criticizing Panama's current fee structure as excessive. Then, after releasing a series of tweets about his stance on the issue, Trump proceeded to clap back on Panama's president and his reply. On Twitter, the president of Panama said, "Every square meter of Panama Canal belongs to Panama and will continue belonging to Panama," to which Trump retweeted this and said, "We'll see about that." Then he posted a picture with American flag on the water, stating, "Welcome to the United States Canal." In a related announcement, Trump named Ken Havery as the next U.S. ambassador to Denmark, reviving his controversial idea of acquiring Greenland. Trump described U.S. ownership of Greenland as an absolute necessity for national security and global freedom, echoing his earlier widely criticized comments on the matter. Well, altogether, this supports the notion of the promised revolution and tremendous shakeup as promised by the unelected, unofficial Elon Musk on November 14th, 2024. Let's revisit.
We're going to shake things up. It's going to be a revolution. And we're headed towards, I think, a fantastic future. I'm super excited. I look forward to experiencing that with everyone. Thank you.
In God we trust. President-elect Donald Trump announced on Sunday his intention to rename North America's tallest mountain, currently known as Denali, back to Mount McKinley in honor of William McKinley, the 25th U.S. president who was assassinated in 1901. He said that he was a great president and will bring back the name of Mount McKinley because I think he deserves it. Unquote. The mountain was officially named Mount McKinley in 1917 after Ohio-born president, although McKinley never visited Alaska or the mountain itself. In 2015, former President Barack Obama officially restored the mountain's name to Denali, the traditional Athabascan word meaning the high one, after years of advocacy from Alaska's natives and state officials. The renaming sparked controversy, with Obama's administration noting McKinley's lack of historical ties to Alaska and the significance of the Denali name to indigenous people. Alaska had formally adopted the name Denali at the state level in 1975 and pushed for federal recognition, which Obama granted. Denali stands at over 20,000 feet and holds cultural and geographical significance for Alaska's indigenous communities. However, McKinley's legacy as a president who led the U.S. to victory in the Spanish-American War and promoted industrial growth through protective tariffs remains a point of pride for some Americans, particularly in his home, Ohio. Trump's proposed name change signals a reversal of Obama's policy and reignites a long-standing debate over the mountain's identity. The data analytics firm Palantir Technologies, by the way, fully sponsored by Peter Thiel, and defense tech company Anduril Industries are reportedly in discussions to form a consortium of technology companies aimed at bidding for U.S. government defense contracts. According to Financial Times, the group could include major players like SpaceX, OpenAI, autonomous shipbuilder Saronic, and artificial intelligence data company Scale AI. The consortium seeks to position itself as a new generation of defense contractors, leveraging innovative technologies to streamline how the U.S. government procures advanced defense and weapons capabilities. Quote, "We're working together to provide a new generation of defense contractors," unquote, the person involved in the talks told the Financial Times. The consortium would unite the experience and expertise of Silicon Valley's most valuable tech firms to challenge traditional defense heavyweights such as Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and General Dynamics. This collaboration aligns with President-elect Trump's plans for a government efficiency drive, which Elon Musk will co-lead. Musk and others have been vocal in criticizing legacy defense programs like Lockheed Martin's F-35 fighter jet, while advocating for mass production of AI-powered drones, missiles, and submarines. This push toward modern, cost-effective technology has created opportunities for smaller, innovative firms to collaborate with major contractors. The reported consortium could accelerate the Pentagon's shift toward emerging technologies, potentially increasing competition for traditional defense players. With the Pentagon's priorities under review as part of the incoming administration's efficiency push, legacy contractors face pressure to adapt or partner with tech disruptors. Announcements regarding consortium agreements with additional tech groups could come as early as January, the report stated. The collaboration underscores a growing alignment between Silicon Valley's cutting-edge innovation and the U.S. defense sector's evolving needs. Palantir, Anduril, OpenAI, SpaceX, and Scale AI have yet to comment on the report. Now, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan warned on Sunday that Iran might reconsider its nuclear doctrine, potentially pursuing a nuclear weapon as the country faces mounting regional and domestic pressures. In an interview with CNN, Sullivan pointed to Iran's diminished regional influence following Israeli actions against Iranian-aligned forces, including Hamas and Hezbollah, and the collapse of the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's regime. Additionally, he highlighted Israeli strikes on Iranian missile factories and air defenses, which have weakened Iran's conventional capabilities. Quote, "It's no wonder there are voices in Iran saying, hey, maybe we need to go for a nuclear weapon right now," unquote, Sullivan said. Iran maintains that its nuclear program is peaceful, but it has ramped up uranium enrichment since former President Trump withdrew from 2015 nuclear deal during his first term. That agreement has provided sanctions relief in exchange for limits on Iran's nuclear activities. Sullivan expressed concern that Tehran might shift its policy, stating, quote, "There is now a real risk that Iran will revise its position that we're not going for a nuke," unquote. The Biden administration has consulted with U.S. ally Israel on the matter and is briefing President-elect Trump's transition team to ensure continuity in addressing the issue. As Trump prepares to take office on January 20th, his administration is expected to intensify sanctions on Iran's oil industry. Critics have urged a return to negotiations, arguing that diplomacy is a more sustainable approach. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni emphasized on Sunday that Russia poses a far-reaching threat to European Union security, extending beyond traditional defense concerns. In remarks made during a meeting in Finland with the leaders of Italy, Sweden, and Greece, as well as the EU's foreign affairs chief, Meloni highlighted that Russia could exploit illegal immigration and other challenges to destabilize the EU. Quote, "We have to understand that the threat is much wider than we imagine," unquote, Meloni said, pointing to multifaceted nature of the security risks posed by Russia. She stressed that these threats will persist beyond the Ukraine conflict and that the EU must be prepared for long-term challenges. Meloni outlined how Russia's influence could extend into various domains that impact EU stability, including undermining public opinion, controlling critical raw materials, and instrumentalizing migration flows. It's about our democracy. It's about influencing our public opinion. It's about what happens in Africa. It's about raw materials. It's about the instrumentalization of migration, she said. She called on the EU to take a more proactive role in securing its borders and preventing Russia or any criminal organizations from manipulating migration flows. The concerns echo accusations from countries like Finland and Estonia, which have claimed that Russia has been allowing illegal migrants from the Middle East and elsewhere to cross into the EU unchecked. Moscow has denied these accusations. Meloni criticized the EU's past approach to immigration, stating that focusing solely on solidarity-based burden sharing was a mistake. Quote, "We have been unable to protect our borders," unquote, she said, emphasizing the need to prioritize the defense of external borders. Meloni also argued that the EU must broaden its concept of security to address critical infrastructure, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and supply chains vulnerabilities. While NATO remains central to EU defense, she stressed the need for a more effective foreign policy and cooperation strategies to deal with these diverse security challenges. Finnish Prime Minister Petteri Orpo reiterated the urgency of securing Finland's 1,340-kilometer border with Russia, describing it as an existential matter for both Finland and other EU and NATO members. Now, I wanted to share with you a clip where yesterday I watched a PBS show, Firing Line. I know it's a conservative show, where the journalist and presidential speechwriter Peggy Noonan advised the press on to prioritize reporting actual news over opinionated editorial pieces, which I think here we can all agree upon. So let's listen to what she had to say.
There's enough conservative commentary. It's all over the place. There's enough liberal commentary. You know what I'd say to newspapers right now? Keep giving us information. We don't need your views, your attitude, your sneaky, snarky headlines. Newspapers and broadcast news, they've become lazy about reporting the news. Young reporters aged, say, 23 to 40, think that their job is thinking aloud about our culture and news things that happen in our ideology. They're not such good reporters. Become reporters again. Dig. New York Times, Wall Street Journal, put 6 people on a story that may take a year to report, but it's a life-changing story. So my advice for the news would be, why don't you take your energy and brilliance and find the news?
Now let's talk about Ukraine. Ukraine will stop the transit of Russian gas to the EU on January 1st at 7 a.m. local time, as announced by Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal. This decision comes amid rising energy concerns. Slovakian Prime Minister Robert Fico visited Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss energy issues and explore the possibility of an early end to the war in Ukraine. Fico's visit, the third by an EU leader since Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, was met with criticism from Czech officials for undermining EU sanctions and support for Ukraine. Tensions with Ukrainian President Zelensky have escalated due to expiration of a Russian gas transit agreement. Meanwhile, Ukraine continues to face Russian drone attacks and strikes on airports far from the front line. U.S. Senators Chris Van Hollen and Lindsey Graham introduced bipartisan legislation on Friday aimed at imposing sanctions on Turkey over its military actions in northern Syria. The Countering Turkish Aggression Act of 2024 seeks to deter further Turkish or Turkish-backed attacks on the Syrian Democratic Forces, which could lead to the resurgence of ISIS and pose a global security threat. The senators expressed hope that the threat of sanctions would push Turkey and Syrian groups toward a ceasefire and a demilitarized zone, while also advocating for diplomatic efforts to achieve a sustained peace. Hostilities have escalated in northern Syria following recent changes in leadership, including the ousting of Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad. Now, Syrian rebel leader Ahmed al-Sharaa, former Julani, held separate meetings with foreign ministers from Jordan and Turkey. Jordan's foreign minister became the highest-ranking Arab official to meet with Sharaa, offering support for Syria's reconstruction. Meanwhile, Turkey's foreign minister called for the disbandment of the Syrian Kurdish militia, the People's Protection Units, following their meeting. The U.S. has backed Kurdish fighters in their efforts against the Islamic State. By the way, previously I've reported that Kurds are currently holding over 10,000 ISIS fighters in prison. Without them, these would be on the loose, allowing ISIS to build a foothold in Syria. Now, unfortunate news, a U.S. Navy ship mistakenly targeted U.S. fighter jet over the Red Sea on Wednesday, according to Central Command, CENTCOM. 2 pilots ejected from the jet, with one sustaining minor injuries. The incident is under investigation. U.S. forces have been conducting strikes against Yemen's Houthi rebels in response to their targeting of commercial shipping in the region. The Biden administration has authorized a $571.3 million defense support package for Taiwan, reinforcing U.S. commitment to helping the island defend itself against Chinese pressure. The package includes defense articles, services, and military education, though specific details were not disclosed. This move follows increased Chinese military pressure on Taiwan, including a major naval deployment and military activities around the island. The U.S. State Department also approved a $265 million sale of military equipment to Taiwan, alongside a $30 million sale of autocannon parts. China quickly criticized the new military aid, claiming it violates the One China principle and the U.S.-China joint communique. Beijing reiterated that Taiwan is a red line and warned it would take all necessary measures to protect its sovereignty. This development further intensified tensions in the Taiwan Strait and between U.S. and China. Now, back to Musk. Musk recently spoke on Zoom, where he addressed the collision course with the U.S. legislative branch and much of the incoming Trump administration over China. Musk said on Taiwan, quote, like Hawaii, an integral part of China, which is arbitrarily not a part of China, unquote. Let's check in.
Much longer at this point. Their policy has been to sort of reunite Taiwan with China. From this standpoint, maybe it's analogous to like Hawaii or something like that, like an integral part of China that is arbitrarily not part of China. Mostly because of the U.S. The U.S. Pacific Fleet has stopped any sort of reunification effort.
Hawaii, really? And lastly, tens of thousands of Cubans protested in front of the U.S. Embassy in Havana on Friday, demanding an end to long-standing U.S. sanctions, which they argue have crippled the island's economy. The march, led by Cuban leaders Raul Castro and President Miguel Diaz-Canel, featured chants of "Down with the blockade" and "We will never surrender." Protesters waved Cuban flags while voicing discontent with U.S. policies. Cuban officials have expressed frustration with President Joe Biden's failure to reverse the harshest sanctions imposed by Trump during his first term and have warned that conditions could worsen under Trump's anticipated return to office. Diaz-Canel called on Biden to lift Cuba's designation as a state sponsor of terrorism, which restricts Cuba's access to international financial transactions. Protesters highlighted the daily struggles caused by power outages, inflation, and shortages, blaming U.S. sanctions for exacerbating the country's economic crisis. The demonstration marked the first protest of its kind in over a decade, signaling Cuba's increasingly confrontational stance ahead of Trump's second term. And that's it for now. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you tomorrow for the actual news on December 24th. We will have a day off on Christmas Day, December 25th. We will resume per usual on December 26th and from then on. By the way, don't forget to check out the AM Actual News in description of this episode. I went live with video, showed a bunch of videos, and reported on everything that happened through the weekend. Also, please check the newsletter where you can read these news that I reported right now and way more, including the exclusive deep dives. Thank you so much for listening, and see you back tomorrow on the Actual News Podcast.